Revelation 3:8. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. Have you ever found yourself with nowhere else to go and no one left to call? This story isn't about miracles that shout. It's about the ones that whisper in the middle of the night, when the city is asleep and all hope seems gone. Rebecca didn't scream. She didn't knock on doors or beg for help. She simply sat on a cold sidewalk, her children sleeping in her lap, and whispered to the only one who could hear her, God. No one saw her tears that night. No one heard her prayers. But heaven did, and when morning came, something happened that would change everything. This is more than a story. It's a reminder that the quietest prayers can open the loudest doors. And sometimes, the answer comes from a place you'd never expect. If you believe in second chances, in silent prayers and divine timing, subscribe to our channel and stay with us. Also, have you ever gone through something like this? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to read it today. Let's begin. The rain had stopped, but the pavement was still wet. Each drop that clung to the cracked sidewalk seemed to mirror the tears on Rebecca's face. Streetlights flickered above, casting broken halos of orange light that danced across the puddles. She sat on a flattened piece of cardboard, her back against the cold stone wall of an upscale apartment building. One child nestled on her chest, the other curled at her side. Both slept deeply, unaware of the storm that raged silently inside their mother. Rebecca's arms trembled from exhaustion, but she dared not close her eyes. Not here, not like this. Her mind repeated one silent plea, please, God, just see me. She hadn't always been here. Just a few weeks ago, they had a roof, a borrowed crib, and simple dinners warmed on a second-hand stove. She worked as a cleaner in a small hotel and dreamed of enrolling in night school. But when the owner sold the property, she lost both the job and the room above the laundry where she lived. No notice, no time to breathe. She had packed everything she owned into a broken stroller and walked until her legs gave out. The city didn't care. No one looked her in the eyes long enough to ask what happened. It was as if poverty made her invisible, and maybe that hurt more than the cold. Cars passed without slowing down. The hum of engines faded into the distance, leaving only the occasional bark of a stray dog or the rustle of wind through plastic bags tangled in trees. Rebecca pulled a thin blanket tighter around her children. The edges were soaked. Her lips were cracked from the wind, and her stomach ached with hunger she'd stopped counting hours ago. She had nothing left to give, except faith, and even that felt threadbare tonight. But she clung to it, because if she didn't, what else remained? A warm light glowed faintly from the lobby beyond the glass doors beside her. Clean marble floors, polished brass elevators, a security guard yawning behind a sleek counter. She imagined the scent inside, fresh linen, coffee, maybe a candle flickering in someone's kitchen upstairs. How far that world felt. Just a pane of glass away, yet utterly unreachable. Her son stirred in his sleep, murmuring a word that broke her. Mama? She kissed his forehead, whispering, I'm here. But deep inside, she wondered, for how much longer? The building's door opened briefly, and laughter spilled out. A woman in heels stepped past, barely glancing down before hurrying into a waiting car. Rebecca instinctively pulled her children closer, afraid of being told to leave, but the woman never said a word. She never even saw her, just another ghost on the street, a discarded life clinging to concrete. And yet, something about that moment sparked a quiet resolve in Rebecca. She might be forgotten by the world, but she refused to believe she was forgotten by God. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to pray. No words, just breath, just the weight of a heart too heavy for language. She didn't ask for riches, not even a room, just safety, dignity, a tomorrow. The sound of her children's breathing steadied her pulse. And for a moment, beneath the city's indifference, she felt something strange. Stillness, peace, a whisper that didn't come from within her, but above her. Then, footsteps, heavy ones, slow, approaching. Her heart raced. She opened her eyes just enough to see boots stop near her feet. She braced for harsh words, for rejection, for that all-too-familiar command. "You can't stay here." But instead, silence. The man stood still, then turned. The glass doors hissed open and closed. Whoever he was, he walked away, or so she thought. Behind her, the motion sensor clicked. A soft chime echoed in the lobby, and somewhere, something unlocked. The night air grew colder, but Rebecca didn't move. Her body had learned to be still, not out of comfort, but survival. Behind her, the automated glass doors had closed again with a gentle sigh. She turned her head slowly, unsure if she'd imagined the sound. Nothing had changed. The guard was still inside, dozing behind the desk, his head bobbing slightly. The lobby remained untouched, yet something in her spirit stirred. Not fear, not hope, something quieter, like a whisper that brushed past her soul and kept walking. One of the children coughed in his sleep. Rebecca instinctively shifted her posture, offering warmth with her own trembling body. Her legs had gone numb. Her spine ached, but she wouldn't dare complain. Not aloud. She had learned that pain spoken out loud often scared people away, but unspoken, it could be carried, hidden in the folds of routine, tucked behind tired smiles. Her strength didn't come from having no wounds. It came from not letting them bleed in public. A single car slowed down across the street. Its headlights bathed the sidewalk in white, then yellow, then gone, just like the others. Rebecca noticed a leaf trapped in a puddle, spinning in slow circles. The stillness of the city seemed fake, like a stage set right before the actors walk in. And still, that sensation returned, a presence she couldn't see but couldn't ignore. It felt like her soul was being watched, not by danger, but by something holy. Inside the building, the security guard blinked. Slowly, he sat upright and rubbed his face. He hadn't meant to fall asleep. Something tugged at his conscience, like a faint bell ringing from a dream. He looked at the monitor showing the entrance. At first, he saw nothing unusual, but then the woman, sitting there with two children, unmoving, fragile, familiar in a way that unsettled him. He leaned forward and watched. Rebecca didn't know she was being watched. She had grown used to being ignored after all. But in that moment, she whispered again, this time not in her mind, but barely audible from her lips. "If you're really there, I just need one sign." Her voice cracked like an old record, swallowed by the night. And yet, even as the wind picked up, something lingered in the air, as if the words had taken flight and found ears. The security guard stood and walked toward the glass. He hesitated. His training told him not to get involved, to call someone, let someone else decide. But something about her posture, the way she shielded those children, reminded him of someone. Someone from a long time ago. He reached for the intercom, then stopped. His fingers hovered over the button, then withdrew. Instead, he turned and walked toward the service hallway in the back. Rebecca adjusted her daughter's head on her lap. Her fingers brushed the child's cheek with the gentleness only a mother knows. And then, for no reason she could explain, she smiled. It wasn't joy. It was faith dressed as defiance, a small spark in the dark. She whispered again, "I believe you see me." A breeze passed, lifting her hair from her face, and for a heartbeat, she felt, noticed. Far above, a window light turned on. A curtain shifted, and behind the glass, a silhouette paused, then disappeared. The city still slept, but someone had heard the whisper. The sky began to shift, not with color but with texture. The deep charcoal clouds of night softened into dusty blue. The city's noise still slept, but the light was changing. A new day was arriving, quietly. Rebecca hadn't moved from her spot. Her body ached in ways that had no name, but her mind was still focused, alert, listening for something, anything. She didn't expect rescue, just presence, a sign that heaven still had her name on its list. Suddenly, there was a low mechanical hum. The sliding door beside her stirred. At first, she thought it was just resetting as automatic doors sometimes do, but then footsteps, measured, intentional. A man in dark slacks and a wrinkled white shirt stepped out. He wasn't dressed like someone heading to work. His hair was still messy, like he hadn't slept much. In one hand, he held a thermos. In the other, a brown paper bag. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. Rebecca's muscles tensed, instinctively pulling her children closer. He stopped just far enough not to invade her space. "Morning," he said softly. She didn't respond. She wasn't sure if this was kindness or something else. He crouched down slightly, keeping his distance. "I saw you here last night. Thought maybe—" He set the bag on the ground and unscrewed the thermos lid. Steam rose. "There's coffee and some sandwiches. No strings. Just warm." Rebecca hesitated. Every part of her screamed not to trust it. But hunger is a voice that doesn't whisper. Her eyes met his. Tired eyes, but not cruel. Eyes that had seen long nights, too. Slowly, she reached out and took the bag. He smiled faintly and didn't move closer. "You don't have to say anything. I've been where silence is the only answer, too." Then he stood, dusted off his pants, and turned to walk back inside. She opened the bag cautiously. The scent of fresh bread hit her first, then a napkin, folded neatly, and on it, handwriting. 3 words scribbled in blue ink. "You are seen." Her breath caught in her throat. She looked back at the lobby, but the man was gone. No sign of him, just the slow hiss of the door closing again. For the first time in days, she cried, not from despair, but because someone had noticed. Inside the building, the man leaned against the elevator wall. His name was Jonas, a mid-level accountant with a bleeding heart and a past he didn't talk about. Something about the woman outside had haunted him. He didn't know why, until he saw her children, and remembered the sister he couldn't save years ago. This morning wasn't charity. It was redemption. Back on the sidewalk, Rebecca sipped the coffee, careful not to wake the children. The warmth burned slightly, but in a good way, like life was crawling back into her fingertips. She clutched the napkin with trembling hand. "You are seen." That simple phrase felt like a sermon, a confirmation, a hand extended from heaven itself. It didn't solve everything, but it changed everything. Above her, the curtain in the window moved again. A figure lingered longer this time, and inside that apartment, someone else was about to make a decision that would echo far beyond the building's walls. Jonas didn't go back to sleep. He couldn't. The image of the woman curled around her children kept circling his mind like a silent hymn he couldn't shake. His small apartment on the 5th floor felt colder than usual. The sunlight had begun to slip through the blinds, casting long lines across the floor like prison bars. He stared at them for a moment, then glanced toward the hallway mirror. His reflection looked hollow, wrinkled shirt, sleepless eyes, but something in him felt alive again. He had once believed in things like rescue and purpose, but life and loss had slowly taught him not to. Years ago, his sister had been in a similar place, lost, afraid, and no one had helped her. He carried that guilt like a stone in his chest, too familiar to question. When he saw Rebecca, something cracked open. Maybe he couldn't go back and change the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could interrupt someone else's fall. Downstairs, Rebecca finished the last bite of sandwich. She wiped her children's faces with the napkin and tucked the note into her pocket like a treasure. She didn't know who Jonas was or why he'd helped, but she whispered a prayer for him anyway. A soft blessing meant only for heaven's ears. Then she looked up again and noticed someone staring from a window. A woman, not judging, just watching. The woman behind the glass was named Clara. She had lived in the building for over 20 years. Retired nurse, quiet, disciplined, known for her roses on the balcony and tea with lemon every afternoon. But she had never seen a mother on the sidewalk with such stillness. There was no begging, no shouting, just presence. Strength hidden beneath tired eyes. Clara couldn't explain it, but she felt drawn, like God had turned her curtains back for a reason. Jonas showered quickly, dressed in his usual routine, navy pants, tan blazer, messenger bag. But he moved differently this morning. His steps weren't rushed, but deliberate, focused. As he passed the front desk, the security guard nodded at him. "You're the one who gave her the food, huh?" Jonas paused. "Yeah, just felt right." The guard glanced at the screen again. "She hasn't left." Jonas didn't reply. He just stepped into the elevator and stared at the rising numbers in silence. Back outside, Rebecca rose slowly, cradling her daughter while her son rubbed his eyes. She didn't know where to go, but something told her not to leave yet. Not this corner, not this building. The napkin in her pocket felt like a key. To what, she didn't know. But she'd wait a little longer. Sometimes doors take time to fully open. She had learned that with people, too. Clara walked to her kitchen. Her hands moved on instinct, boiling water, steeping tea. But her mind replayed the image of Rebecca and the children. Something stirred inside her. Not guilt, not pity, compassion. A quiet voice that whispered, "Do something." She placed a second cup on the tray, one more than usual, and with a deep breath, she headed toward her door for the first time in weeks. At the same time, Jonas stepped out of the elevator and turned left instead of right. He wasn't going to work, not today, because something sacred had happened that morning, and he refused to pretend it hadn't. The door creaked open slowly. Clara stepped out into the hallway, her tray balanced in shaking hands. The smell of lemon tea curled upward like a ribbon of comfort. She hadn't spoken to anyone in the building in weeks, not since her husband passed. But something about that woman outside, her quiet strength, her refusal to fall apart, had pulled Clara out of herself. She pressed the elevator button and whispered, "Just one cup, one step." The doors opened, and she stepped inside with more courage than she felt. Downstairs, Rebecca sat with her children wrapped close to her sides. The city was beginning to wake. Joggers passed, someone walked a dog, horns honked in the distance, but still no one noticed her. She looked up at the sky, its color now pale gold, and felt the heat of the sun finally touch her skin. It didn't fix anything, but it reminded her she was still alive, still present. And sometimes that was enough, until the glass door hissed again behind her. Clara stepped outside slowly. The tray trembled in her hands. She wasn't used to being seen either, not since grief had taken over her life. But here, with this mother before her, something old and beautiful returned. She approached without words, crouched gently, and placed the cup in front of Rebecca. Then she simply said, "For you." Rebecca blinked, confused. Then, "Why?" Clara met her eyes. "Because I know what it's like to pray and wonder if anyone hears." Rebecca didn't speak for a long moment. Then she took the cup with both hands. It was warm, comforting, heavy in all the right ways. She brought it to her lips slowly, and the scent of lemon and honey wrapped around her like a blanket. It was the first time in weeks she'd held something that wasn't for her children, but for her. She sipped, and a tear slid down her cheek, not from pain, but release. Clara noticed and gently nodded. Sometimes the smallest comfort is a miracle. The two women sat in silence, not awkward, not forced, sacred. Two strangers united by something invisible and divine, a connection not born from pity, but understanding. Clara reached into her coat and handed Rebecca a folded piece of paper. I wrote my number. I don't have much, but I can help. Rebecca took it slowly, unsure of what to say. She didn't want to be a burden, but Clara smiled. Let me do for you what I wish someone had done for me. From inside the lobby, Jonas watched through the glass. He saw the two women, one with grief, one with exhaustion, share something holy in that moment. He pressed his hand lightly against the door but didn't interrupt. He had felt led to act that morning, and now he saw the ripple. One act of compassion had become two. One whisper had become a voice, and something told him this was just the beginning. Rebecca leaned her head back against the stone wall, tea still warm in her hands. Her children had fallen asleep again, safe for the moment. She looked at Clara, then at the sky. "Thank you," she whispered. But she wasn't just speaking to the woman beside her. She was speaking to the one who had never left her side, the one who sent a stranger with coffee and another with tea, who answered prayers not with lightning, but with footsteps. Far above, a third figure watched from a different apartment, a man whose heart had long been hardened by pride, but even he felt something, and soon his door, too, would open. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the pavement. Rebecca remained in front of the building, no longer a ghost but a quiet witness to unexpected grace. Clara had gone back upstairs, but not before pressing Rebecca's hand firmly and saying, "You're not alone anymore." That sentence echoed in her chest like a heartbeat. It didn't solve everything, but it shattered the silence she had grown used to. And sometimes, the breaking of silence is the beginning of healing. Inside apartment 3B, Mr. Oliviero sat in his armchair, watching the lobby camera feed from his tablet. He had seen it all: the woman, the coffee, the tea, the child resting on her lap. At first, he dismissed her like all the others who passed, but there was something persistent in her stillness, something holy, almost unnerving. She hadn't knocked, hadn't asked, and yet kindness had gone out to her. That stirred something in him he thought had long died. Mr. Oliviero was 82, sharp mind, weak legs, former judge, widowed, alone. His housekeeper had quit the week before, leaving him without help for the first time in years. The agency was slow to respond, but today, as he watched the woman outside cradle her children, a thought dropped into his spirit like a stone in water. Why look elsewhere when the answer is right in front of you? He turned off the tablet and reached for his phone. Downstairs, the lobby phone rang. The guard answered, nodded, then looked out the glass. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said as he stepped outside. Rebecca stood quickly, unsure if she was in trouble. No, don't worry," he said gently. "A resident wants to speak with you. He's upstairs and, well, he needs help." She blinked. "Help? A job," he clarified. "If you're willing to talk to him." She looked down at her children, then back at the guard. Her voice trembled. "Yes, I'm willing." Jonas, now changed into jeans and a jacket, happened to walk back through the lobby just as Rebecca stepped inside. Their eyes met again. No words, just a mutual nod, one of respect, of understanding. The elevator doors opened. Rebecca entered, the stroller beside her. She took a deep breath. A scent. Something in her spirit rose with the elevator. This was no ordinary visit. This felt like something arranged in heaven's calendar. When the doors opened on the third floor, a caretaker stood waiting. "Clara." "I told him about you," she whispered. "He's tough, but fair. Be honest. Be strong." Rebecca smiled, more out of nerves than confidence. She entered the apartment slowly, the scent of old books and lemon polish welcoming her in. Mr. Oliviero sat by the window, a cane resting beside him. "You're Rebecca?" he asked without looking up. "Yes, sir," she said, standing tall. "I don't want pity," he muttered. "I want someone I can trust." "Then we already understand each other," she replied. He turned and looked at her directly. There was something in his stare, not just scrutiny, but recognition. Rebecca stood in the center of Mr. Oliviero's living room, unsure if she was being interviewed or tested. He gestured to the chair across from him. She sat carefully, trying not to disturb her sleeping daughter still wrapped in a shawl. The old man studied her in silence, tapping his cane lightly on the floor. "You didn't ask for this," he finally said. "Why did you stay outside that long?" Rebecca looked him in the eyes. "Because I believe sometimes the right door opens, when you're still enough to hear it." His brow lifted. "Faith, is that what kept you there?" She nodded once. "Faith, and 2 small reasons I can't let down." Their conversation drifted through memories and values rather than resumes and references. She spoke of dignity, of work, of responsibility. She never asked for charity, only a chance. That moved something deep in Oliviero, a man who had once built a career judging others, yet now found himself humbled by a stranger's quiet strength. After a pause, he leaned forward. "You'll help here, cooking, cleaning, organizing my pills. Start tomorrow." Rebecca blinked. "Yes, sir. Thank you." "And your children?" he asked. "They stay with me. I don't leave them." "Good," he replied. "This house needs new laughter anyway." Word spread through the building. It always does in places with long hallways and nosy neighbors. But this time, the whispers weren't laced with judgment. They carried something else. Awe. Residents who had passed Rebecca without a glance now watched her walk through the lobby with calm confidence and 2 children in tow. Jonas nodded every time he saw her. Clara left small meals outside her door. The building, once cold, had begun to warm from the inside out. One afternoon, a neighbor asked her how she had found such a job without applying. Rebecca smiled softly. "I didn't find it. It found me." The woman tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Rebecca paused, choosing her words carefully. "When you lose everything, all that's left is faith. I waited. I trusted. And one day, the door opened." The woman said nothing. But later, Rebecca heard her praying in the stairwell, something no one had ever witnessed before. The silence Rebecca once carried like a burden had become something else entirely, a testimony. Her story spread not through speeches, but through presence, through the way she held her children, through her patience, her smile, her consistency. People didn't just see a homeless woman who got lucky. They saw evidence that the unseen hand of God still moves in quiet ways. Jonas continued to leave coffee at her door once a week. Clara invited her for tea and conversation. Even the security guard began to greet her children by name. The building had changed, not because Rebecca demanded it, but because her faith had quietly shaped it. That's the thing about light. It doesn't argue with darkness. It just enters and stays. One morning, Rebecca stood at the window of Oliviero's apartment, watching the city below. Her children played on the carpet, their laughter echoing through the hall. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." No one heard it, except the one who mattered most. And that was enough. But just as peace began to settle, a letter arrived, an envelope with no return address. A past she had buried was about to knock again. The envelope sat untouched on the small kitchen counter. Rebecca hadn't opened it yet. Something about the handwriting felt familiar, too familiar. But her children's laughter filled the apartment, shielding her from the weight of whatever that letter held. She would open it eventually, but not now. Not while joy danced through the rooms like sunlight through an open window. Because this moment, this fragile peace, was sacred, and she had learned not to rush through sacred things. Oliviero had grown fond of the children. At first he grumbled about noise and toys underfoot, but secretly he found their presence healing. The little boy, Matthias, had a gift for asking deep questions at odd times. "Do you think the stars ever get tired of shining?" he once asked Oliviero, who had no answer, but smiled for the first time in weeks. The little girl, Luna, followed Clara down the hall every afternoon, insisting on helping water the plants. "Because flowers need friends," she'd say. Other residents began to notice. The quiet building, once filled only with shoes clicking against marble and elevator dings, now echoed with giggles, small feet, and curious voices. One woman left a basket of books at Rebecca's door. Another slipped a bag of warm clothes for the children under the doormat. No one said much, but hearts were moving, and it all began with two children who simply existed with joy. Rebecca watched all of it unfold with reverent gratitude. She never asked for these blessings, but she received them with humility. She taught her children to say thank you, not just with words, but with actions. They drew pictures for neighbors. They prayed aloud for the people upstairs. They left cookies outside Jonas's door, each one with a little sticky note. "God bless you, Mr. Coffee." Jonas chuckled every time. The atmosphere in the building had shifted so much that even visitors noticed. One delivery man asked the doorman, "What happened here? This place feels lighter." The guard shrugged. A woman came and brought the sky with her. The phrase stuck. Rebecca didn't know it, but residents had begun calling her apartment the apartment with sunlight, even on rainy days. Yet through all of this, the envelope remained sealed. Late at night, Rebecca would glance at it and feel her chest tighten. It was from someone she once trusted, someone who walked away, and while everything around her had begun to bloom, that letter threatened to pull weeds from the past. She prayed for courage, for timing, and deep down, she knew God wasn't finished with her story yet. One morning, Luna brought the envelope to her mother. "Mommy, did you forget this?" she asked sweetly. Rebecca took it slowly, running her thumb over the paper. Her fingers trembled, but her heart was steady. "No, baby," she whispered. "I was just waiting to be ready." She kissed her daughter's forehead and stared at the name on the corner. She finally opened it. Inside was a single sentence, 7 words that made her legs weak. "I know they're mine. I'm coming." The words echoed in her mind long after she read them. "I know they're mine. I'm coming." Rebecca sat in silence, the letter open in her lap, her hands trembling. She had prayed for open doors, for refuge, not for ghosts to return. The name wasn't signed, but she knew exactly who it was. The man who had left when she was still pregnant, the one who said he wasn't ready for fatherhood. And now, years later, after never calling, never helping, he was coming? She didn't panic, not outwardly. Her faith had taught her something precious. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of God in the middle of it. So she folded the letter and placed it inside her Bible. Then she knelt beside her children's beds, laid her hands on them and prayed, "Lord, don't let anything that's not from you steal the peace you've built here." Tears ran down her cheeks, but her voice was steady. She had faced worse, and she wasn't alone this time. The next morning, Clara noticed something different. Rebecca's smile was present, but dimmed. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Rebecca nodded, just remembering that sometimes, when the storm calms outside, it starts again inside. Clara offered no advice, only presence. Sometimes silence is the most sacred answer. She took Rebecca's hand and squeezed, and in that quiet exchange, Rebecca felt strength return. Later that day, Jonas knocked on her door. "I was heading to the store," he said. "Need anything?" Rebecca hesitated. "Prayer," she answered honestly. Jonas paused. "Then I'll pray and bring chocolate just in case God answers slowly." She laughed, and it broke something inside her in the best way. She didn't tell him about the letter. Not yet. But his kindness reminded her that not every man in her life was a closed door. Some had been sent to hold it open. Upstairs, Oliviero watched the street from his window. He had grown protective of Rebecca and the children. They had brought warmth to his routine, music to his silence. He didn't know what battle she was fighting now, but he recognized the posture of someone preparing for war, not with weapons, but with prayer. "Stay steady, child," he whispered toward the window. "You were planted here for more than survival. You were planted for bloom." The building buzzed with quiet reverence. Rebecca had become more than a tenant. She was now a symbol of faith, of resilience, of how heaven could live in human form. People didn't just greet her. They watched her. They listened. And they began to believe again, in quiet miracles, in divine interruptions, in the kind of strength that doesn't scream, but sings. Rebecca stood in the lobby that evening, holding her children's hands. She looked around at the place that once ignored her, now transformed by her presence. She thought about the letter again, about the man coming, about what she'd say. Her fingers tightened around her daughter's palm. "We've been planted here," she whispered, "and when God plants, no storm can uproot." But outside, on the other side of the glass, a black car had just pulled up, and a figure stepped out, looking directly at the building she now called home. The man stood in front of the building, unsure whether to enter. He looked older, thinner than Rebecca remembered. His suit was too formal for the time of day, his hands nervously tucked in his pockets. From the lobby, Rebecca saw him through the glass. Her heart didn't race. Not from fear, not from longing, just awareness. This was the moment her past collided with her present. She kissed her children's foreheads and walked slowly to the door, every step filled with grace. He looked up as she stepped outside. "Rebecca," he said, voice unsure. She nodded once. "You came. I got your number from someone who used to know you. I heard what happened. I had to come." She waited. Let the silence speak. Then, "They're mine, right?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked, "Why now?" He hesitated. "Because I couldn't carry the guilt anymore. I've watched from a distance, but when I saw what you've become, I knew I had to face it." Rebecca didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply stood, unmoved yet kind. "You walked away from something sacred, but God never did." Her voice held no bitterness, only truth. "I didn't raise them alone. Heaven raised them with me." He looked down, ashamed. "I'm not here to fight for anything. I wanted to see them, just once." Rebecca glanced back at the building where her children played near the security guard, then looked back at him. "They're happy, whole, and they know love, even if not from you." He swallowed hard, and for the first time, his shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in surrender. "Then I'm grateful," he whispered, "more than you'll ever know." She nodded slowly. "I forgive you, but forgiveness doesn't mean access. You don't get to walk into their lives just because guilt caught up." He blinked fast, as if holding back tears. "I understand." She stepped closer. "But I'll tell them you came, and that you regretted it. That part of healing belongs to them." The door behind her slid open. A soft wind rustled the leaves on the sidewalk. Rebecca turned to walk back in. Before crossing the threshold, she looked back one last time. "We weren't meant to end in bitterness," she said. "Just distance." Then she walked inside, not broken, not bitter, but whole. Her children ran to her, their arms wrapping around her waist. She smiled, kissed the tops of their heads, and whispered, "God kept every promise." The man didn't follow. He stood there for several minutes, then turned and walked away. Not angry, not demanding, just quiet. The door closed behind Rebecca, but in her heart, it remained open. Open to grace, open to purpose, open to the kind of healing that doesn't erase the past, but transforms it. She had come with nothing, but now she had everything, and it hadn't come through luck. It had come through faith. That evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Rebecca lit a small candle in the apartment. She sat on the floor with her children, reading a Bible passage slowly, savoring each word. They listened intently, unaware of how much she had fought to give them this peace. "What does that verse mean, Mommy?" Matthias asked. She smiled. "It means, even when the world forgets you, heaven never does." Isaiah 43:1. "Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine.